Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to one of our In Conversation videos. Today, I'm delighted to be welcoming John Dinkel to the call. John, hey, how you doing?
I'm great, Paul. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
You and I met through a colleague of fairly recently, actually, and you've got a business called Dinkel Business Development in the US. And at the risk of asking a really stupid question, what do you do?
Well, I appreciate you asking. Yeah, thanks again for having me. So we are a business development strategic advisory, and we help organizations, both for-profit and nonprofit, develop a better plan and process around their relationship marketing and outbound lead generation. And so we do this by assessing our clients and in turn creating a formal metric-driven business development playbook or a BD strategic plan. We use Monday.com as our project management tool. And then we come in as kind of a fractional chief business development officer and help take the lead on executing on that plan and the tactics along with it to make sure that all parties involved are focused on the activity, they're focused on building relationships with prospects and partners, and they're focused on growth. And then taking the lead from my part also means any business development coaching or official training on BD tactics and things like that. And then some of the tactics that we use as part of our business development playbook are center of influence marketing, referral strategy, strategic alliances and channel partners, content strategy and creation, networking, all those activities that help you get in front of your prospects and partners face to face so that you're bringing in more relationships to the organization. We are big believers in people do business with people they like and they trust, and you just need to get in front of them, to do that.
Cool, cool. We'll come back to your methodology because I mean, when we spoke, I found it fascinating that because you really structured it. But we'll come back to that in a moment if you don't mind. But
Yeah.
I also found that new business and having been a new business person myself is one of those things that you kind of fall into. Very few people end up going, I'm going to be a new business director, and that's your
Right.
career path. So, I mean, how did you get into doing this? What's your history? What's your background?
Yeah, I've always kind of been in business development, sales leadership, operations. Started my career in sales, telesales, actually right in the beginning while going to school, and that led quickly to sales leadership in my mid 20s. And then I just spent the next several years after that honing my leadership skills at various news organizations around the Mid Atlantic, all big to medium sized newspaper companies. And I ended up in Baltimore at the Baltimore Business Journal, which is the region's largest business to business news organization, as their VP of sales. And I was very fortunate that the publisher at the time decided to retire early. And after 5 years there, I became the president and publisher. And I was in my mid 30s at the time. And that's really when I started to learn more about high level BD and especially the CEO's role in business development, which is huge. Man, we could talk about that for hours, but that's kind of also where I got the idea for Dinkel Business Development, because when we were approaching companies and agencies about advertising, mostly print at first, and then we did that whole kind of digital kind of rebrand. We focused mainly on building awareness, right? Building brand in the community. So advertising, doing full page ads, or digital opportunities to build a brand. Another opportunity, though, or offering we had was sponsoring our business events, and that was both kind of relationship marketing and branding. And a colleague of mine, who's now one of my best friends, actually came up with the idea of to how to help our sponsors do a better job of working the events to get leads, because you know, for them to get an ROI on these things and they're spending $10,000 to $30,000 on a one-time event,
Yeah.
they better get the ROI on it, right? And so we wanted to ensure that we could get them back next year to make sure they got a good ROI. And he kind of vetted a system around event activation. And so he and I would kind of lead a presentation for the sales team, the BD folks, the CEO and leadership about how to prepare for the event, how to work the event, and how to follow up on the event. And and that experience, man, it's just showed me how many organizations don't do business development or relationship marketing very well. And some do it great. I mean, we run into companies all the time that have good systems in place and stuff, but there's a lot out there that don't. So after about 16 years at the BBJ, I decided to leave and start Dinkel Business Development with the idea of advising and coaching CEOs and their teams around good business development strategy.
Cool. So you basically just proved my point about people falling into it by being the one person who has that career trajectory that's gone from start to finish in the business and sales space. Okay, great. I mean, but no, more seriously, I mean, you come at this then obviously with a huge amount of experience. So I mean, it would be remiss of me not to ask you, what are the sort of major big no-nos or mistakes that you've seen in your career? I mean, you don't need to name names or anything like that, but I was just wondering, what do people traditionally go really mess up on when it comes to new business?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I'm always learning. I think business development continues to kind of change, and in the tactics, even though we tend to use the same tactics, we're always trying to, maneuver them a little bit to see how we can get the best out of them. But I would say, one big common mistake that I see, and a lot of this was really interesting. I've learned a lot of this over the past 7 years doing what I'm doing now. And I look back and man, if I know what I knew now back then, I mean, we would have done things so much differently. It's really interesting. But one common mistake is not having the right mindset, and because with many products and services, there can be a long, sales cycle. And let's just say it's even 6 months or more, some 2, 3 years, right?
Yeah.
And in those organizations, you have to build trust. And so I see a lot of CEOs, business development salespeople approach conversations talking about themselves and what they can do. And really good BD and salespeople ask a lot of questions and make the conversation about the person they're talking to, not them. And it's that give to get mentality. You need to give value to get return. And there's a great book out there I read several years ago. A colleague of mine pointed me to, called The Go Giver by Bob Berg. Great book. I mean, classic, just a story. You can read it in a weekend. It's just a classic story about this strategy, about this give to get strategy. And it's something that we just try to instill with all of our clients in all aspects of the business development strategy, when buys and teaching, help them execute on. So there's that. Another one is just being prepared or being ill prepared. I mean, that's one that I think a very common mistake. In my view, good business development people are doing activities to always put themselves in front of decision makers, right? They're networking, they're working their COIs, they're doing these things, but before they're doing these activities, they're preparing. I mean, and how is they're reading a lot, they're researching, so that they become knowledgeable about not only their own business and what's happening in their own world, but their prospects' businesses. They're researching about what's happening in the local economy, new trends, learning different industries, just so you can have a conversation with just about almost anyone, because you never know who you're going to meet at a networking event. And although we have very specific strategies and coaching around how to work an event, you just never know who you're going to meet. So I'm always trying to stay on top of things and try to learn new stuff about my industry and about some of our prospects industries. I would also add to that, using LinkedIn to prepare. And so, whether you're researching someone that you're going to go see a presentation or a new prospect, I'm always going into LinkedIn, man, and seeing, what they're posting, what they're following, who their network is. It's such a great tool to do that. The last one I would say, oh man, one of the most important ones, and it's so crazy. I see this all the time, even with professional BD people and salespeople, is not following up and
Yeah.
and continuing to build those relationships, right? Because so if you're in an organization where sales cycles can take 6 months or longer, you need follow up is so huge. There's a statistic out there and I'm sure you can find statistics about anything, but there was a research done in 2022 that said 48% of sales professionals never make a single follow-up attempt. And then also along with that, 50% of buyers choose the vendor that responds first. So it seems like a crazy statistic, but I'm telling you, I talked to a ton of salespeople, I talked to a ton of CEOs, And as we're working with clients, we understand like how they don't follow up, but it is huge. It's huge. And I know you know this. And having a nurturing plan to kind of build those relationships is really crucial too. So, you know, if you meet someone at a networking event, what are you doing to continue to nurture that? Not just follow up and follow them on LinkedIn and say hi, but what are you doing to nurture that relationship? Are they part of your newsletter? Are you inviting them to events? Are you, sending them an article? Are you liking and commenting on their LinkedIn posts? Like all that kind of stuff to nurture that relationship. It's huge. And I I mean, it's a common mistake. A lot of people don't do it enough, and it's hard. It takes effort. I
Yeah.
mean, so yeah, those would be some three common ones I would point out.
Yeah, no, I think there's some really cool stuff in that. I think one of the, for me, that listening to you, I mean, the theme that sort of runs through all of this is kind of counter to where a lot of the stuff is that we're, as business people where we are today, it's the idea of automating things to make it faster, to make it more efficient.
Yeah,
But actually with BD, for me at least, at the core of all of this is the relationship.
yeah,
And that human to human interaction, and we saw this during the pandemic, and this technology obviously helped us bridge the gap when we weren't allowed out of our homes. But actually, that whole human interaction and relationship building is still totally fundamental.
huge.
And what we've got is a huge bunch of tools that are our discretion to use now to help us follow up and be more efficient. But we must never forget that relationship bit. I think that's core.
It's huge. Yeah, there's an article that came out in Forbes back in September, and it was highlighting all the kind of digital trends in marketing and all really cool stuff around AI and automation
Yeah.
and sequencing, all that stuff. But one of the things they mentioned was like good old fashioned building relationships. I mean, and that's not going away, man. It's a matter of fact, I think it's just getting more and more because
Yeah.
are people getting tired of like getting blasted with emails and ads in their face? I don't know. I respond to a lot of those ads, but I think when it comes down to building those relationships and building trust with a prospect, especially again if you're doing long term sales cycles, it's you got to meet people, you got to get out in front of them.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, having said all of that, I mean, one of the things that really struck me when we started talking was your sort of methodology and your approach, and the fact that what you are doing for your clients is extraordinarily measurable. And I don't want to sort of dive in too deep on this, but could you sort of give us a sort of top level on how you do this? Because I mean, I know you will and can talk for hours on it, but
I love it. Yeah, so it's what we go ahead.
No, no, go on, please. Please just give us the
Yeah,
top line.
so it's what we call metric-driven business development. And so in traditional marketing, obviously we can track metrics, open rates, engagement rates, all that fun stuff. In business development, it's a little bit harder. You're going to various events, you're meeting people, you're getting referrals from clients. So what we've come up with is kind of a system and process to help track that. And one of the first things we do is we have a client take a online business development activity assessment, and it's a simple 10 questions regarding various aspects of business development activity and your perceived ROI on those activities. And once we have that baseline knowledge, along with other discovery stuff, we look at which activities need the most attention or have the most opportunity. We then build out a formal BD strategic plan or playbook in Monday.com, and we look at each one of those tactics that we're executing on, many of which are in the BD activity assessment, and look at how we can kind of build a metric around that. And so, for simplicity's sake, let's just use networking for example. So first, we would look at the number of networking opportunities a client is going to each month and analyze that. Are they going to enough networking opportunities? Are they going to the right ones? Are they following up
Mm.
properly? How many appointments do they expect to get from those? All those kinds of things. And then we take that information and put it into our BD playbook and we work it. So again, for simplicity reasons, let's say your close ratio is 25%. We know that if you get 4 presentation meetings, you're going to close one of those deals. And let's say you need to close 1 deal per month to meet your goal. So based on that, and let's say you're only using networking as a tactic for simplicity purposes, we need to determine how many networking opportunities you need to attend each month to gain those 4 presentation meetings. And so we outline that in our playbook and hold our clients accountable to that activity. help, coach them, focus them, keep them, keep them holding them accountable. And over time, we can determine the right number that they need to be attending and what they need to be getting out of that to get the ROI. So, we then do that for all of the BD tactics that we use. So we try to put those numbers, and we start again at a baseline, but over time we start to learn things, right? And we start to say, if you're really prolific at going to events, maybe you only need to get, go to 2 events, 2 networking opportunities per month to get 8 meetings, and out of 8 of those meetings, 4 are going to be presentation meetings, and then you get your 1 sale. But we won't. Most companies don't have that baseline knowledge, and so that's what we try to do in our plan. Is we try to outline that so that we can really fine tune your business development activity and get the results, and also save time and resources. I mean, I can't tell you how many people waste resources, time, money on going to events when they're not getting anything out of it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point, especially in sort of today's climate where we are sort of, watching the money. I mean, I know there's a lot more to it, and you have very kindly put together an offer for our Mission Hubs agencies.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, John.
Yeah. So as I mentioned above, our offer would be to send our business development activity assessment out to up to 5 staff members, including the CEO. And we will review that and review the results and produce a business development activity assessment report with some insights on the scoring. And it's a great way just to identify quickly some gaps in your BD activities. It's anonymous, so nobody knows who took it or whatever, except for me. But if they want, and what we like to do also is show what the CEO scored compared to the other staff members, and it possibly shows some disconnect. And it is a subjective view on how the team feels about their business development activity and results. But it's also a really good reminder on, wow, we're not doing this like we should. Maybe we need to give more attention to this, and might need some help there. So that's what I would do, and that would also involve an hour to go over the results of the report and talk about it.
Wow, thank you. I mean, I having seen it, I would thoroughly recommend that our partners take you up on this offer, and I think it highlights, as you say, it highlights any of those little gaps and areas of weakness, and ultimately this can only be helpful. So thank you, John, for making that offer. I love what you're doing. I think it's I think I love the structure that you put behind it, the rigor that you put behind it. I wish I could apply all of that to my own BD, but I will do my best. But John, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Paul. Really appreciate it.